So we're just gonna walk through together this kind of disaster of a artistic process that I went through drawing this picture. The reference is a Draw This in Your Style challenge by Chris Draws, and they have a beautiful elf character with these tattoos and these piercings. The character is awesome. As soon as I saw this character, I felt so inspired and motivated to draw them in my style. What went wrong here was that I kept changing my style throughout. I have said before in previous videos that I personally feel like I don't really have a style, like at least I don't have a set style that I always draw with. With different projects that I'm hired to do, I shift my style depending on whether the project is comedic or dramatic. My style is like a chameleon. I look at the project, I feel what I feel, I get inspiration from the details of the project, and then I make art. And the art I make always shifts. So when I approached this drawing at first, I had recently been looking at these beautiful pinup paintings. They're vintage paintings in a style that's called cheesecake. So this cheesecake style of paintings of these women, they're vintage. And I think most people will recognize kind of the fluffy, cakey, smooth, appealing kind of beauty look. And I don't really do like a lot of beauty sort of art. I actually tend to embrace like imperfect kind of visuals and skin tones and aspects like that. So doing something that was like pure beauty was really unusual for me, but I wanted to get out of my comfort zone and do something challenging for me. So as I'm moving through, you can see that I started off like super quick. My initial sketch, I probably sketched it in like less than a minute. Then I moved on to my first kind of base layer of that cheesecakey painting style. But then I started to get into the nitty-gritty details, particularly with the hair. When I was younger, I had a style that I painted hair with. Back when I was painting in Photoshop instead of Procreate on the iPad. And that painting style, I don't remember it very well, but I know that I was super happy with it. I was pretty happy with the way I used to do highlights and reflective light and the base color. I thought I looked pretty good, but I took a really long hiatus with drawing, and I was experiencing art block for a super long time. And believe it or not, in that time, I forgot how I drew hair. Not only forgot how I drew hair, but one of the last things that I was intensely studying when I was doing illustration when I was younger was perspective and environments and locations. All that knowledge just kind of disappeared because it was the last stuff that I learned. I hadn't really integrated it into my workflow the way that I had integrated drawing faces or drawing bodies so much. So all of that kind of fell away as well due to time. So that when I picked up illustration and drawing many years later, I just have to kind of relearn this stuff from the ground up. You'll notice that I don't draw like a ton of environments in my sketches so far on social media. It's something that I definitely want to work on and start incorporating more of. So here you can see I had actually gotten so caught up in trying to remember how I rendered hair and trying to figure out new techniques for rendering hair that I completely forgot to add the most important attributes of this character to make the character look like them. And that was these elf ears, or I guess just one elf ear in this case, and tattoos on the character's arm. And I had to kind of modify the tattoos a little bit because the arm that I'm showing in this image was not really showing in the reference, so I just kind of took tattoos from the other arm and put them on this one. But I wanted to add that because it seemed like a really important part of the character. And of course, like I said, that was kind of an afterthought because I got so caught up and stuck on the hair. And then I had to add the ear, so I made a new layer on top of everything else and then painted over the hair with this ear and the piercings. I was messing with the face a whole bunch, and earlier you could see that the face had a certain look, and then at a certain point I realized that the face kind of had this Scarlett Johansson look. So then I was thinking to myself, okay, like, well, maybe this is a direction I can go. And I actually started to look at pictures of Scarlett Johansson to figure out the anatomy. because I was also realizing as I was getting into the nitty-gritty little details of this face that the eyes were all wonky and the lips weren't really feeling like they're in the right place. The more I got into rendering the tiny little details, the more I felt like my confidence was just melting away, and I got to a point where I was looking at this face and I was feeling like I didn't even know what a face was supposed to look like anymore. So I was looking at these references of Scarlett Johansson from different angles. One thing I kind of realized, which I've been thinking about lately, is that when you're looking at references, one thing to consider that isn't talked about that much in drawing and painting spaces is what focal length the photograph reference was taken at. So I'm referring to the photography itself, like the camera, you put a lens on the camera, and focal length is like how long the lens is. And so how long the lens is changes the look of the picture. It actually distorts the picture and distorts the perspective. If you look up the phrase lens distortion and fisheye, you can start to see what lenses can do. So depending on whether if the photo reference that you're looking at was like a 50 millimeter or a 100 millimeter focal length, the face proportions and shapes can be totally different. So you can look at a dozen pictures of the same person, like Scarlett Johansson, and even if you're looking at her from the same angle, if the photographers were using different focal lengths, then the proportions and shapes and sizes of her features are going to be completely different. So that was one thing that was kind of tripping me up as I was trying to perfect and render and rearrange the parts of the face to have a more semi-real, but I wanted to try to get to be a little bit more realistic vibe. Every time I changed something, I would look at another reference image and then feel like I had to change something else. So at a certain point, I just had to kind of rely on my own prior knowledge of drawing and anatomy and stop using the references. The references are really throwing me off. And then that's how I ended up finishing the face. Then I went back into the hair, and as you can see, the hair went through many transformations. I had been drawing the hair without a reference and just trying to invent this look based on my memories of how I used to do it, but I wasn't really satisfied with that look. So I ended up looking at photo references of hair and treating it more like a material than like a part of the body, I guess. And so I took extra time to study how the hair as a material was behaving in space, and that somehow got me to feel more connected to it, and I reshaped it from there. And then I was thinking of the planes of the hair as shapes that were kind of chunks of material reflecting and refracting the light, and that gave me a little bit more guidance to come up with the final result. So I hope you got something out of this. I almost didn't post this video because I was so embarrassed at how much of a wild ride it was. But then I was thinking that being embarrassed about this was actually a really good reason to post it. And I have to say that I did learn a lot. I learned a lot of new things, and it was all because I made so many mistakes. And making mistakes helps teach you what you don't like, and that's very valuable. And it also teaches you what you have left to learn. And so I got a lot out of making this picture. I would love to change even more, but there's a certain point in time where you just have to call something done. Hope that this video helps someone out there. Remember that progress is progress, and every moment that you take to think creatively or put one line down on a paper is an important step forward on your art journey.